Hi, I'm Elaine Huggins, and I'm teaching another Skillshare class called Resiliency, the skill that drives all other skills. So how did I come to be interested in resiliency of all things? Well, I've been a nurse for 40 years, and back when I started, I was assigned to a cancer unit in a large military teaching and referral hospital on the East Coast. And there were about 15 of us that actually started that summer. Nurses, LVNs, med techs. We were just all out of school that June in the mid-1970s. So we were all put onto this cancer unit. And we were working with young men who had leukemia. And they were age 18 to 35. So they were right in our age group. And they all died. They would come in, we'd get a whole group of them in July, August. We'd do some pretty extensive chemotherapy and treatment, and they'd all be dead by the following year. And in those days, there was no hospice, so they basically were with us for the last months of their lives. And of course, we had other cancer patients too, and again, most of them were with us until they passed away. So this was a really tough assignment, and especially for young people and new people in the profession. So we bonded. We were each other's support, but that didn't stop the suffering in the group. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of partying. Some folks had, a lot of multiple partners. There was a lot of depression. We had one of our folks tried to kill themselves, several divorces, had a couple come down with AIDS later on. The tough thing about this is there was no leaving this department until you were reassigned to another hospital. So 4 years later, yay, I was reassigned to another hospital. And I can remember walking out on a particularly lovely day in June and realizing, my gosh, I have escaped. I escaped. I was actually moving on. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't addicted. I had a good marriage. And I found myself wondering, how did I escape? How did I get out pretty much unscathed from such a difficult situation? Well, 10 years later, I went to graduate school, and I kind of used my master's thesis to try to answer that question. What allows people to survive stressful situations? So I looked at social support and occupational stress, and I found that the ability to be resilient in the face of stressful conditions seemed to occur more when folks had someone they could talk to and try to come to some understanding of their situation that helped them to kind of rise above it. And really having that presence there was really key. So 15 years later, I moved out of clinical nursing and I went into a specialty called healthcare quality. And we used something called improvement science to bring teams together and work on improving processes that decrease risk for patients or improve their outcomes or bring processes up to standards. And I found that working with teams brought out something, a presence or an energy or a synergy. I mean, this was sort of a palpable thing that would happen within teams. Even when they were dealing with the worst situations, they'd become really creative and pretty optimistic despite the problems that they were working with. And a lot of times they came away being big believers in the value of this kind of teamwork because it allowed for so much creativity. It really brought out people's resiliency. So whatever this spirit thing was, whatever the something was, this was really the key to people's creativity and resiliency. It allowed for a great camaraderie, a spirit of bonding. People lightened up and they joked and they really came up with some great ideas, even in the worst situations, made them seem workable and bounce backable. So Anyway, several years ago, I happened onto a book called The Inside Out Revolution by Michael Neal. And in this book, he pointed to a new paradigm that was coming out of psychology that identified 3 simple principles of our experience. And it actually explained how this resiliency works, as well as a lot of other things like creativity and mental health. Anyway, I want to share these 3 principles that are fundamental to explaining our experience as human beings. I want to share this with anyone who's trying to either teach a skill or learn a skill, because this resiliency is key in being able to stay at it, to come back and keep learning how to teach better or learning how to do a skill better. That's really the core of it, is resiliency and bouncing back even when you don't meet the mark. So let me give you an example about this. Sometime back I was watching the Williams sisters play tennis, and I think it was at Wimbledon. And Serena and Venus were really playing poorly. It was kind of embarrassing, really, and one of the commentators made mention of how this was so far below the standard of tennis playing that you'd expect to see at Wimbledon. Well, Roger Federer was there as a guest announcer, and he responded to the criticism by saying that he appreciated watching the Williams sisters play, even when they were off their game, because they still stayed in the game. Even though they weren't doing well, and they weren't doing well in front of a lot of people, they still continued to compete. They still stayed in the game despite that. That's resiliency. Now, some people would say that they're able to do that because they stay thinking positive while they're playing. But suppose you have 2 Tiger Woods, and they're both teeing up. One of them is thinking about what a great day it is to play golf and how wonderful life is. And the other, Tiger Woods, is thinking about his personal life and all the negative things that have happened to him. They both swing the club at the ball at exactly the same place, same angle, same speed. So what happens? Many would say that the first Tiger Woods, who's thinking positive, would have a better outcome. But the answer is that no matter what they are thinking, if they both hit the ball the same, then their balls are going to go exactly the same path and have the same outcome. Because physics is physics. No matter how positive or negative the thought, the ball responds to the physics of the drive. Now, these principles are not about the power of positive thinking. These principles address something before thought, the true bounce back of resiliency. And what's cool about it is that whether we think we have it or not, we all have it. We all have that resiliency. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this class. I hope I've made you a little bit curious about this. So let's get started. This is Elaine Huggins, signing off.